All right, we are live. My wife was reading her news feed and ran across. She brings things to my attention all the time. We talk about them. Was reading her news feed and ran across a post by a professor, Eliot Jacobson. What was he? He was a professor at where? You remember?
No, he's
Okay,
a mathematician. Yeah,
mathematician. Right,
he
right.
lives in Santa Barbara, California.
He lives in Santa Barbara, so somewhere down there, right? A big university, something like that. So, mathematician. He's weighing in on. Okay, a lot of people, especially people who pay attention to reality. Okay, so who are these people? Mathematicians, physicists, sometimes medical practitioners, scientists in general. Pay attention to reality. That's kind of our bread and butter. Reality. Our careers are about that. We feel comfortable dealing with reality. We're not afraid of reality.
Data.
And since reality is data driven, that's usually papers to read or charts to examine and um, to interpret. And we're comfortable with those things. We're scientists, logicians, philosophers, so we're okay with that. So you'll frequently get people from different branches of science and philosophy. And mathematics is not a science; it's more like a philosophy. But it's okay; it's the same people. So. Um, Weighing in on global heating and climate change and our current predicament. And I'll explain what the word predicament means later. And weighing in on this and trying to make sense of it, probably initially for their own purposes, their own self edification. They just want to know what's going on. Is this real? Why are people saying this is a problem? What kind of problem is it? And then maybe even to communicate as uh, uh, science spokespeople or teachers and representing scientific thought to a non-scientific audience, people that follow them or be their own students. Sometimes that happened to me when I was in school. We talked about these things a lot. So your news feed will contain something from a mathematician, and he'll be saying, "Wow, climate change. This is kind of scary stuff. Let me try and interpret this." So he was talking. My wife was reading it to me, and I was going, okay, but fine. Obviously, he's not a dummy. And what he was saying was that if you've been paying attention at all, then this will be self-evident that yes, the Earth is the hottest it's probably ever been. Period. Full stop. At least in this current interglacial. Why are you handing me this?
That's his statement on Twitter.
This is what he said. This was his first few lines of this post on Twitter. So I'll just start here since I'm referring to his thing. The planet was 1.55 degrees centigrade above the 1850 to 1900 baseline temperature for the period January 1 to October 31st. So that's almost the whole year 2023. I'll read that again. This is a bunch of numbers. Don't be afraid of numbers. Embrace the numberology, okay? I know numbers are hateful, right? I mean, we're not, unless you've had a lot of practical training in numbers, your brain just can't incorporate this shit, right? So anyway, here we go. Again, the planet was 1.55 degrees C above the 1850 to 1900 baseline temperature for the period January 1 to October 31. Fact. Observed fact. Not a projection, not a model output. Fact. Instrumented fact. Okay? Thermometers. You're going to argue with a thermometer? Be my guest. That sounds stupid, retarded to me, okay? Thermometers are not magic. They're instruments. They measure shit, okay? Continuing. We're going to need either a huge sulfur-emitting volcanic eruption or near total collapse of global industrialized civilization to make it to 2030, that's a date, without crossing the Paris limits. Okay, let me unpack that a little bit. So start with the Paris limits. The Paris limits, what was it? 2015, the Paris Climate Accords, which Trump promptly got us out of. Not that it matters, because it was all voluntary anyway. We weren't going to do anything. Oh, come on. Give me a break. Anyway, the Paris Climate Accords were useful in that they said, the whole world agreed, everybody signed off on this, that we absolutely had to keep the deviation from the global pre-industrial baseline temperature at or below 2 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees C. That was absolutely drop dead important. Anything beyond that is just unimaginable. But we're not even going to talk about it. And by the way, a couple of weeks later, they were talking all about how far we're actually going to go beyond 2 degrees C. And as an aspirational goal, meaning it would be really important, probably not possible, but still as an aspiration, we should aspire to keep the deviation from the pre-industrial baseline temperature of the Earth to at or below 1.5 degrees C. So now we have two goals. One of them is a drop dead goal. Don't even think about crossing this line of 2 degrees C above the baseline. And as an aspirational goal, maybe attainable, maybe not, 1.5 degrees C above baseline. And James Hansen, back in 1988, when he gave testimony before Congress, he was the lead. He was the research lead for NASA's climatological study of the Earth, and so he was basically a high governmental figure, a bureaucrat, but still a high figure addressing global conditions. And when he testified to Congress, he said global heating is real, and we really need. We have to go back and look at the transcript. But he said basically, it's very important. It's critical that we keep the elevation of the Earth's temperature below 1 degree C. Okay, that was his drop dead. That was his drop dead line not to cross. And he said something to the effect that if we cross 1.0 degrees C above baseline, then all sorts of weird things can start to happen in the climate, the weather, habitability of parts of the planet Earth. And we just shouldn't go there. We should start right now. This is 1988. Okay, so this was 45 years ago. He's retired now. He's out of the business. We should really struggle and strive to keep it below 1.0 because bad things can happen beyond that. And then we start moving the goalposts. So in 2015, about the time, okay, we had already crossed 1.0. So what do? Rather than saying, okay, we crossed 1.0, we're a bunch of fuck ups. Let's absolutely solve this problem right now. Sit down, solve this problem. They didn't, of course. What they did was they established new goals. Aha, that's how you solve your problem. Your problem is you had a goal that now you've just blown through. Well, the solution, obviously the solution is to just make new goals. You're not doing anything to save yourself. You're just going to pretend that you have longer to live. And so the new goals are now 1.5 is an aspirational goal. So meaning we're going to blow through that one too. We blew through 1, we're going to blow through 1.5. But the drop dead date now, 45 years later, the drop dead date, do not under any circumstances think that you're going to cross 2.0. Okay, so this year we have crossed 1.5. People didn't think that was possible for decades. Inconceivable. They thought by having an aspirational goal of 1.5 that we'd be giving ourselves 20 years before we crossed that line. Well, we crossed it this year. Probably temporarily. The temperature of the Earth goes up and down. There's kind of a little wobble. It's natural variation. So one wobble up will cross 1.5, and then there'll be a little wobble down. But the trend for the Earth temperature is not wobbling along a stable line that's not going up or down. The trend for the Earth is to wobble along an ascending line like this. Okay, so you're going up, and one of your wobbles up, a natural variation, will cause you to cross that threshold of 1.5 C, and then you'll wobble down. But the next year you'll wobble up again a little higher, and then you'll wobble down. And a year after that, even when you wobble down, you'll still be above 1.5. You see, it's a stair step. It's going up like this. And so you can't help that as soon as you've crossed 1.5, that means the conditions now have been created. The conditions have been created where you're going to cross 1.5 permanently. Does that happen this year? Well, I don't know. We're above it now. Do we ever go below 1.5 degrees C above baseline? Might. I kind of expect it to, but we might not. The conditions may now be that welcome to the world of 1.5 degrees C warmer than baseline. All of that by saying he's mentioning the Paris Climate Accords, and that was our goal. We set for ourselves voluntary goals. You know how that works. That's going to work. It's like January 1st, you say you're going to go to the gym, and it's voluntary. Of course, you never do it. And so we've crossed 1.5, which was something we were not going to do after already crossing 1, which we also said we were not going to do. We crossed 1.5. And now this guy is looking at that and he's saying, okay, well, we've screwed the pooch. That's it. It's been, 8 years and we did nothing during 8 years with these voluntary goals to reach a, somehow not cross 1.5. We didn't do it. We're still not doing it. Fossil fuel consumption has never been higher. CO2 emissions have never been higher, and they're going up. They're not going down. They're not stabilizing. They're going up. They'll be higher next year. Both will be higher next year, and they'll both be higher the year after that. And so clearly, we're not doing anything. So we've blown through 1.5. It was going to take decades. It took 8 years. We blew through 1.5. We're going to blow through 2. And what he's saying is, in the first few lines of his little tweet, is that, well, now we're in a really bad place. I've been saying that for a couple of years. Our place, it's horrible. It's a nightmare. We're in a nightmare scenario. It's really a nightmare. And so he says, okay, we're in a nightmare scenario. There's only 2 things that are going to save us. I'm like, okay, there's as many as that. All right, let's hear them. One of them is a volcanic eruption. Volcanic eruption can save us. No, it can't. Save you from what? What are you talking about? Or a short-term or small, or long-term but small, or short-term collapse of globalized industrialized civilization. And I think he even uses like quickly, like by 2030. I think he used like half.
No, he said all. He said completely.
He said all of it by 2030.
It's right there.
Okay, fine. I don't have to read it. Even if it was half, it wouldn't matter. I think half was actually.
That was the science.
That was the IPCC report that said we needed to deliberately do this, a 50% reduction, cutting in half fossil fuel emissions.
By 2030.
Mostly CO2.
But he says
by 2030.
Or near total collapse. Of
near total. So let's say near total was what he's calling for, is maybe an 80-90% collapse, which is more than 50%, which is what the IPCC called for.
And maybe you could define global industrialized.
And actually, and it's important to make a distinction here, that the IPCC did not call for a collapse of global industrialized civilization. They called for 50%. A 50% reduction in fossil fuel emissions. Okay, that's not the same thing at all, is it? The words aren't even in the same words aren't in those 2 sentences. There's no overlap of any kind. This guy is talking. He's clearly moved on. Okay, so he's saying he's talking about a near collapse of global industrialized civilization, not a near collapse in fossil fuel emissions. There's a big difference here. A near collapse of global industrialized civilization. Now, I've actually been saying that for a couple of years. I'm way ahead of these guys. And it's not because I'm so smart and I've studied climate science and I'm this brilliant thinker. Maybe I'm just autistic or something, but I stick to the data. Okay. And part of the data is human behavior. Part of the data is how humans have historically done things. Part of the data is understanding propaganda and narrative warfare. All right. And I understand all these things. And as a consequence, it's been really easy for me, like from the get-go, like right after the Paris Climate Accords, 2015, right after that, it was really easy for me to say, well, this isn't going to work. Therefore, the only thing that's going to save us is a collapse of global industrialized civilization, because most of our fossil fuel consumption and our resulting emissions is due to feeding the beast, feeding the beast. And another name for the beast, which will be more familiar to people, is globalized industrialized civilization. That's the beast. I'm not calling it the beast as in like the number of the beast. I'm not getting biblical here, okay? It's like a tiger. It's like you're riding this tiger, and it's going to eat something, right? It's going to eat someone. You're riding the tiger, and it's going to be fed one way or the other. And if you keep feeding it, then you can keep riding the tiger. You have to point it to food to eat so that you can keep riding the tiger. And that's what we're doing. And the types of things that we have pointed our industrialized civilization at is different resources, different regions to exploit, different and more novel ways to consume fossil fuels, greater reliance on fossil fuels for food production, greater reliance on fossil fuels to move goods around in a global marketplace, and so on. And so we just keep feeding the beast that we are riding. We have to keep feeding it fossil fuels. If we stop, it's going to eat us. Now, that's a metaphor, and probably doesn't make any sense. It's eating fossil fuels, and when it's not going to eat fossil fuels, it's going to eat us. Because that's what ends up happening. So this guy is saying we need a massive collapse of industrialized civilization, because he's now admitting, which I don't hear people admit very often. And I always tell my wife, they say all these things. Do they ever say the 5 little words, leave it in the ground? Do they ever say that? And this guy didn't actually say that. Maybe he does later in the article, but he didn't actually say that. He says we need a collapse of industrialized civilization. Okay, that's pretty close. I will allow that that's kind of a stand-in for leave it in the ground. 5 little words, okay? And I want to make a quick distinction between statements that imply an action versus statements that imply a aspiration. So when a group of protesters say we must stop, was it stop or end oil? End oil? End oil. And just end oil. Just stop oil. Okay, there's an actual protest movement called Just Stop Oil. And that sounds great. She says, oh, look, here's a group that are protesting in wherever, Denver or Detroit, whatever. Yeah, UK. Just stop oil. And I say, what's that mean to you? She said, well, just stop burning oil. No, it doesn't mean that at all. And we went to their website and looked it up, and it says, oh, here's what they're stopping. They want to stop new drilling for oil. You see. Now that's narrative warfare. You think they're going to 5 little words, but they're not going to 5 little words. They're going to do this elaborate pantomime about no new drilling and no new leases and no new pipelines and no new this, no new that, because then, since they live in a nation that is dependent on fossil fuels, and since they live in a wealthy nation, you don't have time to protest if you're poor, right? And hungry and you have no water. So these are wealthy individuals living in powerful nations, and they know that if we stop drilling for oil and stop mining coal, nevertheless, there will be plenty for them in their wealthy country with their growing economy, that they will still be able to get in their car and drive to the Starbucks for a latte, and go into the drive-through window and get their latte. They know, at least intuitively, that asking that we just stop oil, which means to them just stop new oil leases, that their lifestyles aren't going to change at all. So you have to make a distinction between actions the words that require an action versus words that are affirming of life and liberty and justice, okay? Which does not require action, because probably you like your life the way it is now. So long as you can simply say, my life is great and and for lots of reasons, including helping the poor, we're not going to stop burning fossil fuels. And everyone's going to go along, and we're not going to have any new leases. And the problem gets pushed down the road, way past my horizon where I care. Um, Other euphemisms that sound like they're something, but they're nothing, would be we should take climate action. Oh, really? Could you name one? Like what? What does that even mean? And of course, they never, there's no bullet point of all the climate actions. It's just, we need to take climate action. Congress needs to take action on climate. Really? Could you be more specific? Like 5 little words? No? Oh, okay. Well, then I guess you don't know what to do either. Uh, what we need climate equity. Really? What does that mean? I think I know what climate means. I think I know what equity means, but I don't see how those two intersect at all. Well, we must make sure everyone, has access to clean water and good medication. And okay, I still don't see climate in there. And everyone should be able to buy an electric car so they can get themselves around and go to Starbucks, go up to the drive-through window and buy their latte. Okay, that's still not climate. And we need more alternative energy. Okay, and where does climate come into all this? Where do we start reducing emissions? Where do we stop, pulling fossil fuels out of the ground and setting them on fire with a match? Where do you talk about that? Of course, they don't, because they don't want to. Because after they get done protesting and regaling everyone that they have to, do all these equities and all this social justice, and every child gets a pony. Well, then they go get in their car and they go drive and to go skiing in Colorado, right? So, okay, so I guess that's where we're at. versus words, aspirations that require you to do something. Now, this guy is saying, okay, so a volcano could help us. Well, that's real convenient to wish for a volcano to erupt to cool the earth, so that the earth global average drops just below 1.5 for what, 3 months. Okay, it's real convenient to say that's one solution. It's not a solution, clearly. Volcanoes can cool the earth, but they do that by lofting huge amounts of material, solid material, into the high up in the atmosphere. Some of it is so fine that it doesn't rain out right away. It can go really high up, and when it's up in the upper atmosphere, it blocks sunlight enough to actually cool the earth. This has been demonstrated many, many times, including in the historic record. There have been years without a summer, as they call them in the northern hemisphere. Years without a summer, where essentially it was cold in the winter and didn't get warm in the summer. And maybe the crops didn't grow real well, and the animals didn't do well, and there was, and people were cold, and they burned a lot of extra fuel to stay warm in the summer. And those are frequently and easily traced back to volcanic activity. So yes, you can get a volcanic eruption that cools the earth a little bit for a short time, but this is not an action. That's not us doing anything. And furthermore, it's not even a solution, because the masking effect of the high altitude soots and particulates from the volcano eventually rain out. They come out through gravity, they come out through rain action, cloud action, and you're right back where you were. So what you're going to hope for volcanic eruptions every other year or so, like forever? That's what you're going to hope for? Why would you even mention that? You have no control. It's easy for you to point to nature and say, hey, where's my volcanic eruption? Come on, get with it. Come on, put up or shut up, okay? The other thing he mentions is a near total collapse of industrialized civilization. Now, that's still not taking an action. That is not 5 little words. Leave it in the ground. Okay, it's like a volcanic eruption. It's a random thing. Who knows how a global industrialized civilization collapses? What is a nuclear war? Unrest in the Middle East? Another massive pandemic? Lots of people dying? Rise of a religious movement that encourages austerity? Who knows? Some random thing, some black swan event happens. It just falls out of the sky and ends or almost ends industrialized civilization. Again, you're not taking an action. You're just saying, wow, I really hope. God, wouldn't it be great if we had like, let me see, like major volcanic eruptions every 3 years? Wouldn't that be great? Wow, I feel so much better now. Or you could say, wouldn't it be great if something, a meteor landed and ended global industrialized civilization, or maybe even, dare I say, a small regional nuclear exchange? Wouldn't that be great? Wow, that would end industrialized civilization, at least for a little while, at least a little bit, and then that would, leave it in the ground. Because if you can't run factories and people aren't driving to work and people aren't flying on vacations and goods aren't moving and whatever, the whole thing collapses. And then you don't need the fossil fuels because it's all gone. We saw that during the pandemic, just a tiny bit. And it was like for like a month, right? But that taught us something. That taught us that a shutdown of global industrialized consumerism can lead to a reduction in fossil fuel consumption. Now, I'm just not impressed by people who are as smart as that guy, although, of course, not a climate scientist and basically not a scientist at all. Just a mathematician who understands numbers, okay, and can think clearly about problems like that. He can think clearly, and he says, numbers are bad. Okay, what can we do? And so these are aspirational goals that volcanoes will erupt, and they'll erupt every 2 or 3 years, and they'll have a masking effect, and it'll cool the earth. And it doesn't matter what our CO2 emissions are. Ha ha. It doesn't matter that we don't leave the fossil fuels in the ground. Ha. We've won. Ha. Every 3 years, the volcano is going to erupt. Aha. And we are saved from having to do anything. You see how that works? Or somehow the global economy collapses. Ha ha. We must do nothing. People are going to be, doing without, and they're going to suffer, but it's not going to be me because, I'm one of the northern white liberal elites. So can't happen to me. Ha 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 ha. It is to laugh, right? I didn't do anything. I didn't volunteer. I didn't make anybody do anything. I didn't tell anybody to leave it in the ground. I didn't upset anybody. I just waited for the economy to collapse. Ha ha. And me, my big professorship, I'm doing fine. I got my electric car. I probably have solar panels on my house, for fuck's sake. I'm doing great. Let it collapse. Ha ha. It is to laugh. It is nothing to me. I'm a professor. I have no goods I ship. I have nothing I manufacture. I manufacture from my big brain, and I brain people. And from my brain, so long as I have coffee every morning and my electric car to Starbucks, to the drive-through window, off to the university, parking in my assigned parking spot, walking into my classroom, slamming my books down on the table and emptying my brain, the contents of my brain. Of course, he's going to be fine. As long as Starbucks can get coffee beans from Ecuador or wherever. They're sourced every place now. Not useful. Not helpful. Wrong direction entirely, right? There's only one way we get out of this. And it is a nightmare. It's a nightmare, though, on an equal footing with what happens to us if we don't do something. There's another nightmare. There are two nightmares. And that's why this problem is a predicament and not a problem. It's a predicament. And there is an actual definition of predicament where the solutions you offer to the problem you've just observed, the solutions, all of them, line them up, doesn't matter, are as bad or worse than the problem you started with. Okay? That's why it's a predicament. And the definition, you can look it up. It's called a wicked problem. Wicked problem. Look it up. There's an actual definition for this type of situation. We are in a wicked problem. Any step forward is going to hurt. And here's why. It's true enough, that a collapse of industrialized civilization will reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. It just will. But let's say we were to orchestrate that. Let's say we were to deliberately do that, not wait for some unicorn to fart and all of a sudden our industrialized civilization has a hiccup. Okay. Let's say that we actually do that. As soon as you propose to any government, to any IPCC group, to any COP, to any UN, to anything at all, as soon as you propose 5 little words, okay, they're going to point out, All the economists are going to leap from their chairs, right? They're going to say, oh my God, you Visigoth, you genocidal maniac. If you cut back on fossil fuel consumption, we have the numbers, we have the papers, we have the research, we've got all the PhDs. Everybody will tell you. They're going to leap from their chairs and they're going to say, if you stop fossil fuel consumption, you're going to cause you personally, you Visigoth, you homicidal maniac, you're going to cause a collapse in the food supply. You're going to cause a collapse in the amount of electricity people can rely on. You're going to cause a collapse of food chains. You're going to destroy global industrialized civilization. Consumerism will go in the tank. You're going to lose all your jobs. No goods are going to move anywhere. The money supply is going to dry up. Money won't even have meaning. There'll be nothing to buy. What's the point? We have to keep burning fossil fuels. That's what they'll tell you. If you come out and say, oh, yeah, the solution to our problem is 5 little words, leave it in the ground. They'll leap from their chairs and say, oh, you are the bad person then. And they'll say, that is choosing a solution that is unthinkable. And then you have to say, but what happens if you don't? What happens if you just go forward with BAU, business as usual? The BAU scenario, what do you get? And they're going to say, well, I mean, obviously, again, every PhD on the world in economics, every Nobel laureate in economics will tell you, oh, well, it's simple. We get economic growth, we get more consumerism and consumption, we get more miles traveled, we get more goods exchanged between continents, more jobs, more money going into people's hands, more sales, more innovation, biggering, fastering, and say, yeah, I know. That's terrible. That's almost the worst scenario possible because that gives you more increasing use of fossil fuels and more carbon emissions. And then your planet becomes uninhabitable. You're already blowing through 1.5 above baseline. You're going to blow right through 2. And estimates are that it's pretty much inevitable at this point that you're going to go right through 3.4. And there have been papers recently published by James Hansen, that guy again, that probably 5 degrees C above baseline is now inevitable, right now, today, inevitable. And if we hit 5, we'll probably go straight to 10 because that's what happened during the Paleo-Eocene thermal maximum, which happened 55 million years ago, I think. I'm not a geologist. The PETM, we hit 5. We couldn't account for the jump from 5 to 10 degrees C above baseline. And another group of scientists said, oh, yeah, if you ever hit 5, you're going straight to 10. Really? Oh, yeah, sure. Because this and that happens. And we kind of know how that happens. And it's kind of inevitable. It's just math and physics. And so, yeah, sure. If you ever hit 5, if you can account for getting to 5, then you get 10 for free. Wow, really? Okay, that's an uninhabitable Earth. It's worth an entire video sometime in the future. But if the average of Earth's increase in temperature above a pre-industrial baseline would ever reach 10, then that means some places it's gone 30 or even 40 degrees C above baseline. So that which is close to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, okay, round figures. So that means that Phoenix, Arizona, which in the summer, this summer, just this past year, typical summer, really, nothing really unusual going on in a planetary system, except for global heating. Phoenix, Arizona had something like 40 days above, I think it was 110 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? So add 80 on top of that. Add 80. And by the way, you don't even have to reach 190 degrees Fahrenheit on a hot day in Phoenix, Arizona. People will leave and or perish at probably 125, maybe even 120. If you have 100 days of 120 degree Fahrenheit temperatures in Phoenix, Arizona, people will either die or leave because you can't survive that. You can't even go outside and breathe the air. You would have to be air conditioned all the time. You would have to be air conditioned in your house, air conditioned in your garage. Get in your car that has been running. Maybe it's a Tesla and you can turn it on and turn on the AC remotely through the Wi-Fi that's been cooling for, at least 10, 15 minutes. If you get in your pre-cooled car. You open the door remotely with a clicker. You go outside, close the door quickly with the clicker because you just let all the cold air out. And then you drive around in your vehicle, and you can only go to shops that have underground garages that are air conditioned, and you take the elevator up to the mall or wherever, and all the shops have to be air conditioned, and everything's air conditioned. And then and your workplace has to have underground parking, because you can't take the risk of parking 300 feet from the entrance to the office, or even probably 200 feet, because walking from your parked car to the air conditioned space of your place of employment, that 200 feet would probably kill most people. And how do you die in 200 feet? You die because, well, for one thing, you're probably obese, because unless you're working out in your home, you're not doing anything to stay healthy. You're probably not going to the gym. Does the gym have underground parking? Probably not. So you're not doing that. So you're living at home. You have a sedentary lifestyle. You've gotten really fat, and you drive yourself around in your car everywhere, and everywhere is air conditioned, and you avoid all exertion because you can't go outside. And then when you have to cross that 200 feet, you overheat about halfway across. You faint, or maybe you just trip, and you fall on the ground. And the ground is 180 degrees from the heat of the environment, plus the sun beating down. You fall on the ground that's 180 degrees, and you cook. And this has already happened. This has happened already in places like Phoenix, Arizona. People who become dizzy or just trip and fall on the ground. It's so hot that they get third-degree burns. And if they can't get off the ground, then they can die on the spot. They can cook and die on the spot. So that's uninhabitable Earth. And that's not 80 degrees Fahrenheit above baseline. That's 2 degrees Fahrenheit above baseline. 2, which is why they say 2 is a drop dead number. Do not cross 2. You're going to be in bad shape if you allow the globe to heat to 2 degrees above the baseline temperature from pre-industrial. And I can promise you, I can absolutely promise you, we're going to blow right through 2. And if we ever get to 5, which I don't know, could be in the rest of my lifetime, the next 20 years or so, given my age, next 20 years, if we ever get to 5, we're probably going straight to 10 on skids, grease skids, bullet train style, right to 10. Could happen in 2 or 3 years. Could go straight to 10, could take 2 or 3 years. Seriously. Abrupt temperature changes like this are seen in the geologic record, that they are so abrupt that they don't even seem to take any time at all. It's like, how long did this take? We can't tell. It just happened immediately. And the resolution of the geologic record the fossil record isn't good enough to tell us if it was 5 years, 10 years, or 100 years. It's kind of synonymous. It's just very fast, very instantaneously. So if you don't voluntarily stop burning fossil fuels, and as bad as that would be, then you're going to get the alternative, which is uninhabitable Earth. We are headed there. We may already be there. I am not confident that we are not there right now. And I'm not confident at all that 1.5 degrees C doesn't drive us like a piston right through 2. How could that happen? Feedback mechanisms. Look it up. Look it up on Wikipedia. Climate change feedback mechanisms. Aggravating feedbacks, okay? We hit 1.5, which we're right there. We're there. We're on the threshold. We've gone over a little bit. It'll push you like a piston, bang, right through 2. We'll be through 2 before we even know it. And so the economists will tell you, don't reduce fossil fuel consumption. My God, increase fossil fuel consumption. We need more growth. We need growth to energize the climate change actions. Okay, we need growth. We need extra money to pay for the solar panels now. We need extra money to buy everybody an EV. We need extra money to manufacture all this new stuff that we don't currently have, and sometimes don't even know how to manufacture it. We need more capacity. We need more distribution. We need more ships crossing the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean, bringing all these new things to people who need them. And they need jobs, and we need growth, and we need more businesses, and biggering and fastering and more and faster and quicker and everywhere. And that doesn't sound like fossil fuel reductions. That sounds like 2 degrees C and bang, right to 5, and wham, right to 10. That's what that sounds like. That's uninhabitable Earth. It becomes uninhabitable at 2. Massive temperature swings, massive extreme weather events are already happening at barely above 1.5. James Hansen was right 25 years ago when he said, don't go above 1.0 above the baseline. And we went above it. And rather than say, wow, that was fast, what a mistake we just made, rather than saying that, we just moved the goalpost. We set it to 1.5. Actually, just set it to 2. Set it to 2. That's far enough down the road. I'll be retired from politics. I'll be retired from my CEO job. I'll be, sitting on a deck of a boat of my own in the Caribbean. And by then, if we go over 2 and there's a problem, it's someone else's problem. Haha, I solved my problem, which is how to avoid this being a problem for me personally. And that's what they're doing. They're moving the goalposts. That's what they're doing. Smells like failure to me. And the predicaments of, wow, we need more growth to green our economy. Whatever that means. I just don't even know what that means. I'm not stupid. I just don't know what that means. We need more growth to green our economy. And we have to avoid, any problems with degrowth or depressions or anything else. This guy is calling for a near collapse of the global industrialized civilization. Let's say that's 80%, 90%, or even 50%. Did you know that the central banks of the world, which is now basically all the world, the central banks of the world struggle mightily on a daily basis to keep the GDP growth in the positive, not the negative. It has to be positive. It just has to be positive. There has to be growth. It can be 2%. It can be 3%, but there has to be growth. And if we ever go into a negative, negative 5% growth, so growth in the opposite direction, shrinkage, if you rather, but negative 5% GDP growth is defined as a recession. And you hear that word all the time, recession. Oh my God, there could be a recession. Oh, shaking my bones. I just can't even deal with a recession. Good Lord. Are we talking recessions now? Oh, well, get the banks involved, get the governor involved, get the president involved. Recession. Oh, I am so frightened. Oh God, what a Halloween scary scenario. There could be a recession. A depression, like we had in the 30s, global depression, is a 10% collapse of GDP, not 50%, 10%. It's a double recession. Depression, oh, the death spiral. Oh, we'll never recover. If we have another depression, well, my God, we'll need another world war to get out of it, just like we did the last time, right? Death spiral, depression. Oh, nothing happened. No jobs. Everyone's out of work. They're starving. Soup kitchens. No innovation. No profits. Oh God, you just mentioned profits. Now I can't even think straight. Now I just can't even. What? You expect me to think straight when you're going to see a depression and the reduction in profits? This guy's talking for a near collapse of the global industrialized society. You mean like a depression? No. How about 80%? Because, that would leave it in the ground. 5 little words. Leave it in the ground. That would do that. If it was 80%, not 50%. I don't think that would do it. So 80% is like an 8 times depression. That means for 8 years, you would have to have a 10% reduction in gross domestic product, 10% reduction in GDP, not 5%, and not 2% growth. Consistent 10% reductions in GDP year after year after year after year, without break, without pause. It would probably have to be engineered. The central banks would probably just have to say, well, all right, let's start a depression. Well, that was last year. How about this year? Okay, another depression. Let's blow away 10% of the economy. Okay, well, that's 2 years further on. What do we do this year? Another depression. Okay, let's do it. I'm in. I'm all in. Both feet. Let's do this. It's the 4th year. Can we stop yet? No. Oh, we need another depression on top of the 3 we've already caused. Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's whatever. Blow up the money supply. Regulate the businesses out of existence. Stop the flow of fossil fuels. Stop the movement of goods. Raise interest rates to 100%. Hell, raise interest rates to 300%. Okay. Kick people out of their houses. Now you're homeless. When you're homeless, you got no money. You can't spend money. So we're collapsing the economy. 5 years later. Okay. Are we done yet? we've had a 40% decline in GDP. Can we finish? No, we need 80% to save ourselves from uninhabitable Earth. Okay, well, uninhabitable Earth does sound pretty bad, and there's plenty of evidence from the geologic record that that's how it happens. You just piston right through. You go through 1, then you go through 1.5, then you go through 2, then you hit 3, and you go to 5, and you go 10. It's just like clockwork, right? And so to stop the clockwork, to stop the machine, then we're going to have an 80% reduction, and we're not there. If we've only done 40%. Okay, another year. Let's collapse some more shit. Let's set some more things on fire. Let's throw some more people, out of their homes. Let's close up some more businesses forever. Hell, let's just destroy entire industries. Do we need an insurance industry? Do we really need that? Do they need growth? Do they need profits? Fuck them. Get rid of it. Regulate it out of existence. No one gets insurance. If your house catches on fire, eat it, because we need to destroy everything. We need to destroy you. We need to destroy your home, because we can't destroy the planet. Well, this is where we live. This is where our entire species live. This is where all the life in the universe is right here. And we can't allow this planet to become uninhabitable. So you can't have a home. You can't have a job. You can't have an income. You can't have a profit. You can't have economic growth. And you can't ever burn fossil fuels. Yeah, fuck that. Well, yeah, that's the goal here. We're collapsing industrialized civilization one depression at a time until we get to an 80% reduction in fossil fuel consumption, because that's the only way we can figure out to do it. We had to blow this shit up completely. And by the way, one of the reasons they fear a depression, a 10% reduction, is of this thing that they call a death spiral. So all they would really have to do is orchestrate a depression, not allow it to end, and not allow any fixes, including a global war. Yeah, that worked the last time, but you're not doing that this time because nuclear weapons, right? So we'll orchestrate a depression, and then we'll just sit back with our arms crossed. Okay? Marketplace. It's your job to figure out who lives and dies, both in the metaphorical sense of businesses living and dying, jobs going forward or just disappearing, bank accounts having money or being emptied, retail movement of goods. Do you move the goods, or do you not? Which goods are worth moving and which goods don't? And and sure, drill all the fossil fuels you want, drag out the coal, pipeline the natural gas, but we've just blew up the economy. So without industrial production, without people driving to work, without jobs, without the movement of goods and the movement of money, you're not going to have customers. So drill all you want to, baby. You're done. Or it soon will be. Okay. You won't have customers. They won't need your shit. What do they need? Food, clothing, shelter. And probably they'll be getting their food, clothing, and shelter, through digging through trash piles. That's how they did it during the Great Depression, so-called, in the 1930s. They had people, rag pickers, going out in the landfill and trying to find baby diapers and stuff they could make clothes out of. Let it take care of itself. Let it sort itself out. We're gonna engineer a depression, and then we're gonna sit back and watch. And we're all bankers, so we're gonna be fine. I've got my Bentley. I've got my private jet. There'll be enough fossil fuels for me to put fuel in my private jet. I'm fine. Okay. The rest of you fuckers, you figure it out. Okay. And if you have to eat each other, that works too, right? Cannibalism. Yeah, fine. Whatever. Calories, find them where you can. Food, clothing, shelter, right? They would have to have orchestrated a depression, and do nothing about it. And you get the rest of it for free. All the way to the bottom. And that would represent a catastrophic or near total catastrophic collapse of globalized industrial civilization. And consequent to that, a inevitable, possibly rapid, reduction in the amount of fossil fuel consumption. Because the two are essentially the same thing. Lots of economists will tell you that economic growth is growth in the fossil fuel supply. And growth of the fossil fuel supply is economic growth, that these two are virtually synonymous. And if you want to contract fossil fuels consumptions and therefore CO2 emissions and methane emissions, you must collapse your economy. And you can either deliberately collapse your economy and get the results you want, or you can deliberately collapse the availability of fossil fuels and get the results you want. All of this, as painful as it is so that we can avoid the other side of the same coin, which is business as usual, leading to an uninhabitable Earth. And if you think the uninhabitable Earth is like, well, that's kind of abstract, that's sort of in the future. I mean, maybe it's scary. Uninhabitable, what's that really mean? Uninhabitable for who? Like people in Africa? Okay. I mean, really, if the choice is I don't have gas for my car to drive me to the drive-through at Starbucks, or and that, or deaths of people in Africa due to uninhabitable Africa, I'm trying to weigh these two things here. Okay, my lifestyle, their lives, my lifestyle. Geez, I don't know. Kind of tough. You're putting it to me? I have to make a choice now? Okay. All right, fine. I don't think it's real anyway. I'll keep my lifestyle and we'll see what happens, right? That's where people are at right now. That's where they're at right now. And they will continue in that way. And the economists will say, see those people over there? See? You're talking about reducing fossil fuel emissions by keeping it in the ground. Keep it in the ground. 5 little words, okay? You're going to do 5 little words. And those people would rather have their morning latte at the drive-through window at Starbucks. And you need to sell your 5 little words to them, not to the economists, because the economists are doing fine. They're doing business as usual. They're great. They're popular when there's growth and jobs and economic prosperity. And of course, they then sell the idea that we're going to have everybody growing and everybody prospering and every child gets a pony. Okay. So you got to sell to your neighbors the virtues of 5 little words. Okay. Now, if you can do that, then we're a little closer to being able to de-escalate the coming crisis of uninhabitable Earth. We can start trying to de-escalate that. And we'll try to make good on our commitments to not exceeding 1.5 degrees of baseline. And we'll try to not exceed 2. And, if we exceed 2, then we'll do everything we can to get it back to 1.5 sometime in the future, like maybe 500 years in the future. And we feel like we can manage this. And you're saying that we just have to go cold turkey off of fossil fuels, 5 little words. And then people in the North, in the wealthy North, don't have fossil fuels to get them to Starbucks for the latte. And that's a fucking disaster. That would be a depression, that you'd be plunging us into a depression. And, maybe the people in Africa wouldn't die. Maybe they would die of starvation. I mean, you just blew up modern agriculture. Was 100%, 1000% dependent on fossil fuels. You just blew up modern agriculture. We had one little war in Ukraine and everybody's scrambling around trying to find food. What's going to happen when nobody can grow food? Nobody can grow food because they don't have fossil fuels to run the tractor, to run the pumps, to transport the goods, to process the goods, to deliver them to the market and air condition the market and keep the goods, frozen. And, you just blew all that up. So not only will so instead of the people in Africa dying of uninhabitable Earth, the people in Africa are going to die of starvation. Wow. Yeah. I guess you're right. Yeah. Well, we have to stop burning fossil fuels anyway. Because uninhabitable Earth means nobody. So I've just thrown the people in Africa under the bus. Unless the people in Africa can be told, look, you're volunteering to go first, okay? You decided, and there's 1 billion people in Africa. You decided that you're going to be dependent on modern agriculture in the North to feed yourselves. And well, that's not going forward. You've got to find another way to feed yourselves. We could do that. We could go down there. We could tell them that today. That if we keep doing what we're doing for you, feeding you with our modern agricultural output, which, by the way, is part of our GDP growth, right? That we keep growing more and you keep consuming more and someone gets paid for the growth. If we keep doing that, Africa will become uninhabitable and you will have nowhere to go because people can tell from your skin color where you're from. You're not going to be able to integrate. They won't even let you across the border. We just saw that in Europe. The UK, the Brexit was because Europe was allowing brown-skinned people from Syria to immigrate and from Africa to immigrate immigrate into their country. And they were like, well, we'll just accommodate them. We could use the extra labor anyway. We're having demographic collapse. These are young people because they can travel. They're young people, and therefore we'll just put them to work. And well, no, it didn't work that way. Could have worked that way. Would have required policy changes, and uh, dare I say it, the white people weren't interested in the policy changes. And now the UK exited the EU because they were going to require the UK to take in brown-skinned people. And the US is so freaked out about brown-skinned people coming to the US that we got the MAGA movement and Donald Trump. And that was just Syria. That was just 1 million people. What do you think is going to happen when Africa becomes either uninhabitable or underfed, and those people just have to leave? Some will have to stay, and of course they'll die, and some will be able to leave, and they're probably wealthy, so they'll just show up with money and say, let us cross the border, thank you. And maybe they'll integrate, maybe they'll start new businesses, maybe they'll become college professors who talk about these things, maybe they'll become college professors teaching mathematics. We certainly need more of those, don't we? I don't know. I don't know how this works out. I don't have to know how this works out. We are in a wicked problem. So there you go. All your solutions are just as bad as the problem you're facing. That's the definition of a wicked problem. I am defining it as such. Therefore, ipso facto, we are not going to have good solutions. We're going to have bad solutions. So what do you want? Do you want uninhabitable Earth as a result of another 20 years of business as usual and avoiding all difficulties and just going forward like everything's going to be groovy, every child gets a pony, and then the world is uninhabitable, and so we just piston our way all the way to 10 degrees C? Thank you very much. Or are you going to deliberately implode the global industrialized civilization, therefore, ipso facto, blow up agriculture, and therefore can't feed the world anymore? And we've gone from a planet that had 200 million people on it who could feed themselves. That was working pretty well. 200 million people who could feed themselves. We've gone to 8,000 million people who can't feed themselves. Period. Done. Truth. Fact. 8,000 million people who can't feed themselves. None of them can. Not even a rancher with 2,000 head of cattle can feed himself. Millionaires wouldn't be able to feed themselves. They would have to have huge tracts of land, lots of servants, probably slaves, or people who were just happy to have any food at all. And they're going to work the land, and they're going to work it without fossil fuels. They're going to be out there with a shovel, and they get some of the produce. They get to take it home and feed their family. Most of the produce goes to the billionaire over here and in his entourage. And so you've got 1,000 acres in production. You've got a family of 20 in the billionaire's entourage, servants, head chef, a couple of other people, and then you've got 500 farm workers working 1,000 acres of land, and the farm workers are just serfs. You're giving them food, clothing, and shelter. That's it. Yeah, we could do that. And so now you've made a story for 20 people plus their support network of people who are happy to be there, right? Yeah, those guys can survive. But can they survive uninhabitable Earth? No, they can't. By definition, it's uninhabitable. Bitch, you're dead. Okay? It's uninhabitable unless you're living underground and you come above ground wearing a spacesuit that has built-in air conditioning. This Earth cannot be inhabited. That's why people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are frantic to get off this planet. They are in fibrillation trying to get off this planet because they know what I know. That it's either going to become an absolutely rip-roaring 8 times depression collapse of the industrialized system, which leads to starvation and various sundry hundreds of levels deep of deprivation, or this planet becomes uninhabitable. And either way, you don't want to be on this planet. You want to be on fucking Mars, looking down with a telescope at Earth as it eats itself alive. Frantic. They are frantic to get off of this planet. I don't think they're going to have time. I don't think they're going to make it. They're going to be stuck here like the rest of us. Mr. Musk, memo, you're fucked. Either way, you're done. And that's why this is a wicked problem. That's why there's no good move. All the moves are bad moves. And we can either take those moves deliberately and try and salvage something for as many people as we can and keep this planet from becoming uninhabitable, or we can all die. Wow. 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 I use that a lot in these videos. Really? Wow. What can you say? Well, language fails us. So, Mr. Jacobson is right and he's wrong. Yes, he's right. We have a big problem. We have a serious problem. But his solutions, praying for volcanic eruptions every 3 years, or having to implode, waiting for the economy to implode by itself somehow, big mystery, right? Hand of God, whatever. Um, he's wrong. That's not how it's going to happen. You're not going to get the volcanic eruptions. Forget that noise. You might as well be hoping for the return of Christ Jesus to the earth to wave his hand and change the whole problem, right? And you're not going to get a mythical imagined economic collapse that doesn't kill most of the people on earth. And just quickly before I end, because I do need to end, it goes on longer than I wanted it to, but so people talk about human extinction. No, that is not happening. Yes, humans may end up living underground, walking on the surface in fucking spacesuits, but that's not extinction. And we point out some numbers to you. There are 8,000 million people on this planet right now. 8,000 million. That's a big number. That's a number with a lot of zeros after it. There's not 8,000 million of anything on this planet but people. Probably not even ants. Okay? There are 8,000 million people on Earth. A 90% reduction in the population still leaves you with 800 million people. 90% reduction. That sounds like a lot. That sounds like a nightmare. But there's still 800 million people. That's more people than used to exist on this earth when it was pristine and people could feed themselves. 800 million is still beyond self-sufficiency. You could have a little piece of land, and you can feed yourself. 800 million. A 99% reduction leaves us with 80 million people. That's a lot of people. 80 million people is not extinct. That's a 99% reduction in the human population, and there's still 80 million people. That's a big number. And the question I have is, given the Earth's current state, and given that the Earth's temperature is heading towards uninhabitability, how fast we get to 80 million people, a 99% reduction, sounds horrific. No doubt would be. Experiencing a 99% reduction of the human species on this planet would be a nightmare that would be burned into our DNA, probably on some level. Still leaves us with 80 million people. Can this planet, this late in the game, with everything that's happened, including the oceans are essentially on fire. Okay, the ocean food chain is just about to collapse. Hurricanes are coming ashore in places that have never had hurricanes, and they're coming ashore with strengths due to the hot water spinning them up that are just unimaginable. And fires are burning everywhere in the boreal forest. Now, it's no one that lives up there, but it doesn't matter. Fires are burning everywhere in the boreal forest. The boreal forest is doomed. Okay, all the trees on the planet probably, to some extent, are doomed, including the ones in the Amazon. That's the world that's going to support 80 million people still. Are you serious? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe not. Remember, at some point, if it gets hot enough, we're going to have to live on the ground and come to the surface in space suits, air-conditioned space suits, just to be on the surface, because it's going to be too hot to even be up there for more than 5 minutes. Too hot. Too hot. Basically everywhere. Essentially everywhere. A 99.9% reduction in humans, it leaves you with 8 million people. Okay, maybe we can manage. Maybe 8 million people. Well, they could burn all the fossil fuels they want because they don't really matter anymore. The population is so small that burning fossil fuels is probably not a big deal. So go ahead. I guess you'd have that as a resource if there's only 8 million of us left. But what if the planet can't really support 8 million people? Try to imagine 8 million people living on Mars. Can't be done. I just don't know how you would do it. 8 million people living on the moon. Are you even serious? Are you crazy? 8 million people living in low Earth orbit, like in the International Space Station. 8 million people in orbit. Are you even serious? Because that's what we're talking about. If the Earth becomes that hostile to life, then being on the surface could be very, very tricky. And how are we going to bury our cities? How are we going to invent spacesuits? How are people going to live on the surface at all if it gets hot, if it gets to 3 degrees C or 5 degrees C? And that's a 99.9% die-off of the human species. Leaves us with 8 million humans. I don't know. Still sketchy. 8 million people. Are you sure? A 99.99% die-off of the human species leaves you with 800,000 people. Just short of a million. 800,000 people. That's like the population of the city where I live. 800,000 people. Not a big city. We've got an international airport, but that's basically our only claim to fame. And I don't even know that it's that viable. We're a really tiny city. And 8,000 million people, the population of one medium, small-sized city in California. 800,000 people. That's a 99.99% die-off. That's about as close to 100% as most people would ever dare go. Still leaves 800,000 people in the population. Humans have gone through, well, proto-humans, meaning before Homo sapiens, and humans, us, have gone through two known or suspected what they call genetic bottlenecks. It means there's so few people in a breeding population that the lack of genetic diversity, okay, is visible in the genetic record. So that's why humans are so similar to each other all over the planet. We've never speciated. We've never evolved beyond each other, where one group of humans in Africa can't really breed with another group of humans living in Asia. Animals do that because they can't cross-pollinate enough to keep their genetics similar enough to reproduce. So humans went through a genetic bottleneck, meaning a population that was still reproducing of about 2,000 people, maybe as much as 10,000. So 800,000. And from that 2,000 or so, humans, Homo sapiens, not population in Africa with others elsewhere doing fine. In the planet, 2,000 people were able to get us where we are today. Nice trick. Not extinct. Not even close. Okay? So 800,000 humans left on Earth is not even a serious bottleneck. Not even a genetic bottleneck. It's like nothing. And that's a 99 point, I'm trying to keep track of my nines here, 99.99% die-off doesn't even constitute a genetic bottleneck. We've been less than that. I'm not even going to try to put more nines on there. You can do the math. 99.99% die-off sounds like an extinction level event. Not even close. Now, a 99.99% die-off of elephants would be an extinction event. You would end up with essentially one elephant, and then they're functionally extinct. You might end up with one female, but if there's no male, functionally extinct. But for humans, given how numerous we are now, a 99.99% die-off is not even close. Not even close. So no, Guy McPherson, human extinction is not even possible unless the planet becomes uninhabitable. And uninhabitable means exactly what the word implies. Okay? We may have to live underground. How many people can live underground? 800,000 people? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe 80,000 people can live underground. Maybe 8,000 people can live underground. So that means that only the wealthiest, most self-important people on the planet end up surviving. Everybody else is toast. Everybody else gets left on the surface. The elites live underground. They have these wonderful underground malls, underground homes, underground Swimming pools, underground, everything, underground parks, all LED lighting. They're underground. It's all air conditioning. You don't really need air conditioning when you live underground because the planet has a very comfortable range of temperatures, unless you go really deep. 8,000, maybe 80,000 people living underground, almost a complete die-off, verging now on a genetic bottleneck. But they're probably pretty happy with that outcome. They probably fall to their knees every day and praise whatever god of economics that they believe in for saving them from the uninhabitable surface. They're living underground. And there's another 8,000, maybe 4,000 people living in space somewhere, maybe on Mars, whatever. And they're on their knees praying to the gods of economics. Thank you for saving us. Dear God of economics, whoever you are, whatever your name is, you gave me money. I was able to escape to underground, able to escape to Mars. And, Saint Elon and Saint Jeff. And we praise the saints every day. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. And there's, 8,000 people left of the human species, 8,000. And, 100,000 years later, the Earth cools off a bit because the CO2 has been drawn down naturally by, mostly erosion. And the seas are boiling. Everything in the seas is dead. So there's no plants on the surface. And so gradual erosion causes a drawdown of the CO2 from the atmosphere. And that takes what, a million years? Probably about that. That's uninhabitable Earth. That's what you get if you do not deliberately implode the global industrialized civilization. If you don't implode global industrialized civilization, as bad as that is, as much death and starvation would come from that, and you just go business as usual, you get uninhabitable Earth. And all the continents are devoid of life other than scorpions. Scorpions do fine in the heat. So you'll have scorpions. I don't know what they're eating. Maybe they're eating other scorpions. Not my problem. So you've got the surface that's being baked pretty much 24/7, 365 days a year, baked, 120 degrees at least, including at the poles. No ice anywhere. 300 feet of sea level rise as a result of all the ice melting. And coastlines are flooded. All the major cities that were on the coastlines are now underwater, forgotten, never see them again, never hear from them again. The surface is baked, nothing but scorpions, and 8,000, maybe 80,000 people living in a combined situation of either underground or in low Earth orbit or on Mars. Wow. Okay. That's it. Those are your two scenarios. You can choose one or the other. This is a wicked problem. Those are and you think, well, there must be something else. No. Thought about it a lot. Scientists, data driven. I understand physics. I understand Earth dynamics. I understand population dynamics. I understand where our food comes from. I understand the global economic system. And I'm looking at the numbers, and the numbers don't look good. Those are your two choices. You can pick one, and maybe you get to save something, and maybe you get to save a lot of people, and you get to save your technology, and you don't have to live underground. Wouldn't that be nice? Or choose nothing, and you probably end up with 8,000 or maybe 80,000 people. 99.99, lots of nines, okay? Reduction in human population. And, those people are doing fine. And in a million years, we can return to the surface. Sounds like a science fiction novel. It's not. It's how this shit works. It's goddamn physics. It's the physics of the Earth dynamic system. That's how this works. It does not work another way. The geologic record reports it has happened. This time, we're doing it. We're doing this to ourselves. You could stop. We could leave the fossil fuels on the ground. 5 little words. Just do it. Do it. Do it now. Just do it. Take the hit. Yes, it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. It's going to be, if we do it and if we survive it, people will hold it up as the most immoral thing people have ever done. But they're not going to say that stop burning fossil fuels was the immoral thing. What they're going to say is the immorality began when we started burning fossil fuels, changing the Earth system in the atmosphere, and then we didn't stop. We did not stop when we knew we should. We did not stop when we still could. And when we finally stopped, it was too late. That's the immorality, not the immorality that we finally stopped, because that is inevitable. We could have stopped 40 years ago. We could have stopped 70 years ago, and we didn't. That was a choice. It was an immoral choice. It has doomed 8,000 million people, plus or minus, to an excruciating, agonizing death either way, because the way out of this is going to involve exactly that either way. Either we choose to do it, we take the hit, we make the hard decision, or we don't, and the planet becomes probably uninhabitable in maybe 30, 40 years. Could be, maybe less. We're just going to blow through all the limits. Just wham, right through them, just like we just did this year with 1.5 degrees C. And, 10, 20 years ago with 1 degree C. We're just going to keep plowing through it. And pretty soon we're not even in control anymore. There are no brakes. We start pushing brakes, what we think are brakes, and nothing happens because the brakes, there's nothing there. There's no brakes. There's brake pedals, but they don't do anything because nothing can be done. And it just plows through it. It just goes through 2 and it goes through 3. It goes straight to 5, and then 5 triggers 10. We go straight to 10, and it just happens willy-nilly all the time, all around us. The sky falling on us. Those are your choices. And, I'm saying this, I'm like John the Baptist in the wilderness, right? I'm that crazy guy with a beard and ragged clothing, trudging across the desert saying, repent, repent. That's who I am. I'm John the Baptist. The Lord is coming, whatever. I'm not even Christian. Lord is coming. John the Baptist, all ragged and long beard and scruffy looking and wild-eyed, on his soapbox. Sky is falling. Lord is coming. Yeah, I guess that's me. Except I'm talking about physics. Good luck, I guess. And Professor Eliot Jacobson, you're wrong. You're not entirely wrong. You've got the right idea. You need to change your tune. Say the hard thing. Say the hard thing. 5 little words. And when they say, then you're going to end everything we know. Everything we hold sacred and eternal will end. Yes, that's the next thing you say. It's another hard thing. Yes, we don't have a choice. It's got to end. We must end it. If we don't end it, then it ends itself. And it ends itself in a place where then we get ended. We won't have any choice. We'll be living underground. Is that what you want? It could someone who's 30 years old today, maybe even 40, might end up living underground towards the end of their life. No choice. And people will be making, probably by hand with a sewing machine and materials, making their own spacesuits to wear above ground. Sounds crazy. Not crazy at all. Not at all crazy. Practically inevitable. If we don't leave it in the ground, then that scenario is practically inevitable. We are going straight to 2 and then 3 and then 5 and then 10 degrees C. And we're going there on greased skids. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that.